Hello everyone, Sanjay here, and welcome to another update for Astral Collision. Let's make a game Astral Collision, I guess. There's a bunch of stuff to discuss. I've added, or begun the process of adding, several new towns. Notably, I've also... Well, okay, let's finish that thought. I have added Sycamore. Well, I'm in the process of adding Sycamore, which right here is a farming town. It is located, if I go back to the world, and don't zoom out so far. This guy right here is Sycamore. And then I've also added Sandy March right here, which is where I've added an incredibly important part of game progression. So this NPC, if you're rank 2 in the Adventurers Guild for 500 monies, will let you purchase the indefinite use of this boat. And so once you've purchased it, he will walk up here. This NPC is here to prevent you from being able to talk to him from up here and preventing his movement patterns. We'll talk about some of how that all works in a bit. I have also, let's see, fleshed out a few more things. I fleshed out the palace some more. Notably, the palace, I have it closed now for most of it when it's nighttime. And so I have some code here that if you are... Right here, what this if does is it says, hey, if you are outside of the box, you get teleported here. So this is the box, right? You're allowed to be in this region. And if you're outside of this region, you get warped right here in front of this guy. So I've also continued to add equipment. I've been figuring out a bunch of stuff with regards to what the character's specific skills are and how they're going to function mechanically. I also quickly added a generator or a calculator over here for how much maximum TP somebody has given their strength, dexterity, and fire, because I needed to do that for balancing some stuff, because I needed to know how much TP people would have. There's also some stuff that I did here for some calculations, because I radically rebalanced this guy right here. So there's a couple of very significant things I did. Let's just... Well, first of all, I realized that I fixed the bugs with these, so that way you'll see this now says plus strength and dexterity right here, and not just strength plus strength with ones. And I had to fix it in both places, and I only fixed it in one at first, so that was a little annoying. I don't know, let's make this 2 times dexterity. So just kind of show, if I say favorite dexterity, average threat, randomized stats for level 1, this is currently being classified as a minimal threat. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. One of which is its damage is actually very low. I recalibrated the damage rating. I've also dramatically recalibrated critical rating. So if I give this some ridiculous multiplier like 10, you'll notice that it bumps the critical factor up tremendously, up to 3.68. But that's because it has a multiplier of 10. If I give it a multiplier of like 1.2, it counts for very little. It does decrease it some, but it counts for very little. If I bump this up to 50, even at a 1.2 multiplier at 50, it's like, yeah, that's definitely a factor, but it's not like enormous, because it recognizes sort of what that's doing. So what I have going on here is I just have a logarithmic function, effectively, or an exponential function. I forget exactly what was going on here, but I had an exponential function, which basically takes the original thing that I was calculating, which is your critical chance and your multiplier multiplied together divided by 100. So basically it's your percentage times your multiplier. But I'm using that as a power, so 4 to that power minus 0.32. This is just to calibrate it, so that way... I was getting about 1 with a 10% crit chance and a 2 times multiplier. Is giving me approximately 1 when I take off 0.32. And so that allows me to be able to... You can see over here... No, you can't. You cannot see over there. My apologies. I have my face over that part. I don't really have a good way of moving my face. There's a bunch of math over here to kind of try to figure out how do I calibrate HP. That's directly kind of under my head. Here's some stuff for figuring out accuracy, because accuracy was throwing stuff off a lot, and I wanted to tighten it down a bit. So originally accuracy was basically the average of whatever accuracy value you put in, 100 and 100, right? It would take basically the average of that. So if you had 150 accuracy, it would be, well, you could see right here, it'd be 1.25, because that would be the average between 150 and 100 accuracy. And I went to an alternate scheme where I was basically taking the cubic root of this value. So that's what to the 1/3. You can see over here up in the bar up here. U equals, or U19, so this cell, to the 1/3 is the cubic root. And that was just to smush it. So that way it was having less impact. I didn't want accuracy to have as big of an impact on sort of the ratings that I was getting as I was getting. And then, like I said over here, you can now see these values. I wanted to kind of squash some of this a bit. So you can see, like, at 50 crit chance with a multiplier of 1.2, I'm getting a result of 1.9, whereas under the previous system that I'd had, that would have been, what, 50 times 1.2, divided by 100 times 3, that would have been a 1.8 multiplier. So that's still, like, that would be kind of in this general vicinity still. So it's not, like, dramatically different in some regards. Let's see, because that's what I was doing. But for certain things, it is. So, like, if I had a 25 with a or with like a 3 times multiplier, that's suddenly 2.25. That's having more influence than I necessarily want. So I was just adjusting things. So that way, if you go really extreme with some of the stuff, it still is like, it's a pretty big value. But if you're not going super extreme on stuff, if you're kind of keeping a nice ratio between the critical chance and the multiplier, it's not having a huge impact. But it's not having a huge impact either direction, right? 3% crit chance is shrinking it pretty dramatically to 0.76. But before, if you had those values, was that 3 and 2, that was a 0.18. And that was absolutely tanking the deadliness value. Like, is it less deadly when an enemy basically never crits? Yeah, decidedly. Is it this much less deadly? No. Decidedly not. So I did a lot of different stuff to kind of calibrate it. I reformulated the HP formula, so that way the upper bound was higher on this guy. And I do apologize if I've accidentally put anything underneath my face over here. I'm not used to thinking about this area being covered for some reason, despite having done face cam for quite a while now. So yeah, this will give me some better data to work with. And it makes it so that way different things are just a bit easier to work with. And like, I can bump this deadliness up by having more values, or by, like, I don't know, say increasing damage by 100 over here brings the threat level up really quickly, because it's suddenly its damage factor is no longer terrible. And like, you can always, like, I originally put this here for debugging this, but it's always useful to just be able to see, okay, where are things actually at? Like, the overall average stats are a little low, for example, because the average is 20 and most of these are below 20, and things like that. So like, that gives me some information as well. But anyway, I dramatically recalibrated this because it was just giving me, it was not giving me useful information. So I really wanted to modify it to give me better information. I'm going to go ahead and yes, save changes to the game, show you some of the stuff in Engine, because I think it's going to be a lot easier to kind of go over stuff there. Now, the first thing you'll notice is it's extremely quiet. That's because I made it so that way I could actually modify these values in increments of 1. So I'm going to turn these back up to where they have normally been. So these have normally been at 20, and these have been at like 80, I want to say. It will take a while, but I added, because it was before moving these in chunks of 20, and that was not good. I have been doing a good bit of playtesting as well. There we go. There we go. And this is just a file that I've been working on with all the characters in it, so it's just a little bit easier to kind of go over. So let's see. I'm trying to remember what things are new. I've been doing a lot of stuff with adding food things. So if I go in here and I talk to this guy, it'll tell you that, like, onions do stuff now, and apples, and nuts, and berries. And eggs don't yet, cheese doesn't yet, sausage doesn't yet. Bread does. Bread gives you some nice regens, which is pretty cool. Oh yeah, and I have foods. So I don't know if I have any Oh yeah, I had given them mushrooms. Mushrooms currently somewhat increase your maximum HP. This guy now sells bracelets, which restore some MP on hit. These will be very useful for some of my characters. The diamond bracelet uses a different formula than the silver and gold bracelets, which make them better, potentially better for some characters, and potentially worse for others. I've also done a few minor stat recalibrations. Notably, if I go through some of my characters, I'm not sure how much this will show up post hoc or not. I boosted this character's wind stat tremendously. I don't remember if I did anything to him. I think I also bumped up her dexterity a bunch. I believe I gave her a lot more wind as well. I gave a couple of characters way more wind than they had. Let's see. I'm trying to remember who all... I tweaked her... Let's see. I think her strength and dexterity are the same, but I think I tweaked something up on her. I don't remember. Like I said, I did a few tweaks here and there to a couple of different characters to bump some of their stats up. Maybe it was... No, I bumped her dexterity up as well. But there's just a number of characters where it's like, I really need these stats to be a bit higher on them if they're supposed to kind of fulfill a broader role. And so I bumped up some stats on a couple of the characters to better facilitate that. Yes, food is at the restaurant. See in here. So this person will now sell a few things: a hearty hero stew and an apple pie. And these just give a little bit of a buff of some kind for 1,000 steps, or death, or resting at the end. Those are things that will end it, obviously. So, yeah, this is specifically made to help with some of the poison spam that you'll see. And this is just a generic useful thing, because there's a pie here. I'll be slowly adding more dishes over time. There is actually an additional dish, but they don't sell it here. They sell it elsewhere. So if I go... I've also been adding music to all of these maps, so that way I have more music. I have also, while I'm here, done a very important thing to the crafting interface. I have added... let's see, if I get very creative with pointing. Right there, down there. I'm trying to point to it ineffectually because it's not mirrored, but you get the idea. Well, that's off camera. But right here, this whole thing, I added it because, originally I had how many of this you own, how many you have this in your possession. And then I'm like, I need to know how many characters can actually use this weapon, because not every character can use every weapon, so I don't know what I need. So I went about adding those. You may remember that, where I had a little thing of here's how many characters can use this. And I'm like, yay, that'll solve my problem. It did not solve my problem. So I actually sat down and figured out, okay, how do I do this? And one of the things I realized is I have the possession count. Right here, it tells you how many of this item you own. But I need to be able to know who can actually equip it, who can use it, and if it's any good for them. So here, I can figure out, oh, these are the characters that can make use of the scythe or a mace. Well, none of these guys can use a mace. Here's who can wear a tunic or an adventurer's breastplate or plate mail or whatever. So I put in the time and the effort to get this stuff fleshed out. Ooh, she can actually... the advantage of gloves is they give you a potential additional chance to act. This gives you more damage, though, so I'm going to buy that for her. But this is a huge improvement. I don't know why. It was one of those things where it's I don't know that that's really necessary, and then I played with it enough, and it just eventually came to the point where yeah, that's absolutely necessary. You'll notice that I've also added more items here. One of the things I'm trying to flesh out is just your ability to get equipment. I needed more gloves. I needed footwear. I need accessories. So I'm just slowly in the process of adding that stuff in. Let's see. I think this focus may be new, but I have a focus here as well. I can go get a crystal shard in the mines. And root I get by killing certain enemies. I think I'm going to save these guys and load a different file that's further along, because I think that'll be a bit easier to discuss some stuff with. I've been doing a lot of tweaking with other things as well. So I've added a bunch of enemies. So I don't know how likely we are to encounter them. Mushroom snakes. These are new. These are also a reference. I don't remember what they're weak to. Whatever. Never hurts to Sickening Soil. Enraged Smash is a mace attack, by the way. It's very useful. Rallying Cry is a new skill for him. So he has Valiant Attack, which does more damage the lower your HP is. Right now, it is okay, because he has full HP. This heals for more based on how much HP you're missing. He's not missing any HP, so it's garbage. This heals you, and then gives you Strength and Dexterity. If you are low on HP, it gives you even more, which really boosts your attack, potentially. I think I'll just Valiant Attack as one of these guys. This is useful. It's 3d6 time stuff, so it's actually a little bit more average than it may appear. It's not usually going to be hitting down at 267. It can, but that's unlikely with rolling 3 dice. This is usually the best option. Spell Charge. Yeah, this is because of her offhand. She gets that. I'm slowly trying to figure out what things they should do. These characters are probably the most refined in that regard. I don't know. Let's just From the Shadows one of these things. Hey, it's frightened. Oh, good. He's taking some damage. That'll make him deal more damage. Oh, Mushroom Snakes attack twice, by the way. That's just kind of their thing. They just always attack twice. Reapa's really strong. It's a Scythe attack. But it's hard to get up there to actually use it. She can probably get there with Valor if the enemies don't die first. Valiant Attack or Power Attack? Valiant Attack is stronger. That's typically the case. That is typically the case. I don't know, just attack a thing. It doesn't really matter. Mushroom Snakes always drop a mushroom, which is fun. That Valor was probably pointless, because this is probably going to finish them off. And if it doesn't, the Poison will. Yeah. Now, there are a couple things that I have noticed. You may have seen that they dropped mushrooms there. One of the things that I've noticed... Oh, this healer is closed right now. I want it to be morning. There we go, healing. She will now sell me fruit salad, which gives +10 to all my elemental attributes, and she gives me... I can buy each of the fruits that she has now. I actually gonna buy one of each. I have a lot of cash on this because I've been doing enough random adventuring. Yep. This is the weird spot where you exit here. There's no good way of doing it, unfortunately. That's just the way that it's... If I wanted to try to accurately represent the place, I should say. So you'll notice there's a little bit of crowd noise in the background. If I walk over here, it plays the sound for in here, but more quietly. This NPC is just here to give me an adventurer's kit, and then they vanish. I'm going to delete them later, but the adventurer's kit is an item that I'm supposed to give you that I haven't given you. I've also tweaked this, so that way I just specifically, you can see I'm rank 3 right now. It takes 50 points to get to rank 2, which is basically your first plot goal. But this should, I don't know. Cool. I can make a fruit salad. Doesn't cost me anything to make a fruit salad. Now I have a fruit salad. So if I look at... I mean, these characters have things already, so I'm not gonna... There's weird stuff that was going on with food. And I need to figure out what it is. It's with the estate types thing. Oh, their apple pie just wore off, so... Never mind. So now I can go... where's my fruit salad? Yeah. Okay, so let's just look. 36s mostly... Yeah, terrible fire. So if I go in here and I eat this fruit salad, these are now all 10 higher. Because that's what fruit salad does. It's very useful, I assume, to give +1 to all of your stats. So if we go over to the castle, we can... Yeah, it starts playing the castle's music. You can see there's some guards here now. Tells you to mind your manners. These guys just have some things about being an honor, but being kind of boring. The king and queen don't say anything yet. They will probably talk about stuff. Oh, I haven't grabbed that yet, have I? This is the Royal Guard skills. It gives you some additional defensive skills. What are you using, Sir Lionel? Squire's training. If I give you this, you get some useful defensive properties. Is that more useful than Blitz, though? That, I don't know. Let's go ahead and throw it on for right now. I have been... So I figured out, while I'm kind of... That is not the design document. While I'm kind of on this, it's under skill sets. Over here, this is figuring out, okay, here's the different worlds. They all have one set each of these different types of things. So I'll be kind of filling this stuff out. I know, for example, Elsana is set in the snow. Its destruction magic is probably going to focus on ice, for example. So there's going to be some stuff like that going on. Let's just get this up here so we don't have such a bright background. There's some other NPCs that I'm trying to flesh out the world with. They're having a conference to figure out their response to some of the events of the Astral collision. And it's not going very quickly. This guy talks about needing a breather and taking a break. She's concerned about, was the Astral collision a really good idea? Just don't tell anyone that she said that. And if I go over here and I rest until night, then you get told, it is closed. You may talk to the bounties board. If you try to go past him, he's like, yeah, no. And you have to leave. The bounties boards will have stuff in here. Notably, now, resting like that doesn't do anything to your food. Let's see. I think the easiest way to continue... This place obviously needs to get filled out dramatically. But this guy here is just talking about the price on the boats. But there's a lot of adventures going by. Because it's 500 monies. Whenever you enter this town, your boat gets put in this town. It is extremely slow. We can go visit other lands, but there's literally absolutely nothing to do over there. So I'm going to come down here and fight a Chimera. So I've been adding a lot of enemies to these later areas. Chimeras do not spawn very often, so it can take a little bit longer. These guys are threatening, to put it mildly. You have to be notably very careful about what conditions you put on them, because they can turn that against you. Let's see. Ooh, I now get bandage wounds, so I can heal an ally for some amount, plus an additional amount further based on the TP. And this gives some TP and does a little bit of healing. Mostly this is here to cure allies of fear and rage. Fear being a stat that gets thrown on by some of these slightly later enemies that can be really nasty. Let's just enrage smash this thing. And I think it might not be a bad idea to empower weapons. I wanted not actually from the shadows this guy. But Phantom Knight might not be a bad idea. Ooh, that was good damage. Yeah, that'll help get through this guy. This guy is now going to start showing why he's scary. Because he can do multiple actions in a turn. I've done a lot of trying to figure out exactly how strong this thing should be. Because it needs to be relatively strong, but these characters are also like level 12 or 13 or whatever. Oh, good. We reflected one of them. So they need to be able to take some stuff too. They need to be somewhat powerful at this point as well. So Inspiring Shout would give us a bunch of MP, but we don't need that. Ooh, this actually does some healing now. Yes, please. Give a Valiant Attack. You can see, like, it still has a ways to go to take this thing down. I'm going to have her potion herself, though. Yes, heal my team. No, sound's getting a little wonked up. That happens sometimes. Oof. Just throwing them power attacks out. Okay. I still feel an imbue life here is quite relevant. 282, and yeah, okay, that's not. Rallying Cry is probably the best option here. I could also Valiant Attack for a lot of damage, but and a heal. Okay, I don't need to throw too much healing out. This party has really good healing going on too. Yeah, I was above 50%, so that Rallying Cry didn't quite do as much as I wanted. But that's okay. Oh, great! Oh, great! Vicious Bite spam. Exactly what I needed. Well, then. You can see, these things are very scary. What's useful here? I'm not even sure. I can imbue. Warcry is not useful. It is the opposite of useful. I think I'm going to just imbue here. Interception's not a bad idea. Imbue will probably give enough HP to kind of survive, but yeah, let's just heal Sir Lionel. Yeah, that thing almost went back up to full HP. This is a very scary enemy, and the idea is that enemies in this blackened area are very scary. Okay, please don't push them out of red. Okay, Mishizo can be a target now. I'm not entirely thrilled about that. I basically wanted Sir Lionel to absorb most of those attacks. It's not guaranteed to get 4. It does get quite a few, though, often. Let's see. I guess I just want to heal her. And attack it again. So it does have a skill, if I put too many conditions on it, that will consume all of its conditions. Oh. His strength and dex went... No, his strength and dex are up. That's why he has more. Okay, this straight up killed Sir Lionel. Which is not ideal. You'll notice, I don't remember if I had done it at this point or not, but I cleared this up of a bunch of random stuff that I had set to be usable in battle, the materials, and I removed that from being the case. Ideally, I'd have the inventory organize itself differently, based on stuff. Maybe I will at some point implement some sorting, so that way, like healing items get sorted to the top, and materials are sorted lower and stuff like that. Like non-usable stuff gets sorted to the bottom. That would be a good thing to spend some time figuring out, setting up, but. Anyway. I'm gonna just potion Jennifer up here. Get Sir Lionel back on his feet. I should be able to take this thing down. Getting the strength down actually really helps nerf the deadliness of that particular maneuver. Yeah, okay, and then just heal there, and I guess she should just push herself? I don't know. Oh, yeah, Weapon Aura is going away. Does decrease damage that's being dealt. This thing has quite a bit of HP, and it's low enough that it's starting to spam Vicious Bite, which is not really what I want, but here we are. Okay, she's Valoring herself. She has Fear on her. Fear is going to make her lose MP and TP every turn. I want the Valiant Attack buff and Draining Dark on that guy. It might be low enough that From the Shadows is a good idea. Ooh. I get 2 from the Shadows. Excellent. This thing's weak to Dark. But, yeah, okay, good. She took it down. It also drops a lot of bounty slips. That's going to be an enemy that's on the King's Bounty. But you can see all of these are sitting up here. They're not... I can't do anything with them because they're not usable outside of battle. But they're up here because they're first in the list. This is one of the issues with RPG Maker in that having stuff... Oh, you can also see that I have 121 fangs. That kind of goes over the colon. I might want to tweak how some of that works. But anyway, I want to, while I'm thinking about it, clear that up. Yeah, so like I said, I've been working on a bunch of different enemies. There's probably more stuff to show off in the engine, but I'm going to go ahead and close that for now. Let's talk about some of the other things that have been going on. That is not the enemies tab, see on here. So last we saw, I think we saw the forest spider. I've added the killer wasp, the chimera, which we just saw, which has a lot of HP, as you can see. These stats have been generated by my thing. The deadly poppy, which is kind of a variant on the harrower that's a bit more defensively focused. So this is being put in groups with stuff. And then the mushroom snake, which is a reference to the badger, if anybody was wondering. Snake and mushroom being in that. And this gets 2 actions per turn. Its actions are basically like attacking. So instead of being able to do something like a blitz or whatnot, it gets attacks like this. And then I added a bunch of different troops with those things in them. So there's, So one of the things that I've noticed that is something that I'm going to have to address this one's probably really annoying, that I am going to have to address going forward is the early areas are like giant rats. Maybe this can spawn if you're in the plains area. But the variety of enemies, particularly in the forested areas, is very low. It's particularly for the early forest areas. So if we go back out into the world, and I switch over to the region map so we can see the regions. This area is nasty. You don't want to accidentally walk in there. But if I bring this up, you'll notice that stuff that's in 11 is just the plains. So 2 giant rats and the rat plus the 2 bats, potentially, the night bats. They can show up in the plains. 2 buzzkills can show up in the plains and the early forest. 2 devil hens can show up in the early plains or the higher level plains. Giant rats, devil hen, basically devil hens will only show up in plains areas. And so these early forests, these 12s, are like harrower and buzzkill, 2 buzzkills, and harrower and 2 giant rats, and 2 harrowers right here. And the variety in encounters that you end up having in those areas is way too small. So I need to add a lot more troops for those areas, and I need to add more enemies. So that's something that I'm planning on doing going forward. I'm planning on adding a lot more variety to some of those early enemies because I need more variety. I need it to be interesting. You're going to need to do a bunch of kind of grinding-ish things. Because, again, your goal is... That's just... So this has a bunch of different, if you're facing this way, you enter here. If you're facing that way, you enter there, sort of stuff going on. So if you come in by the sea from the top or from the left, it puts you at the dock. If you come in from the bottom in Sandy March, down here, you come in down here. And if you come in from the facing left, you get put here because you're walking in that way. There's a lot of little details like that. Yeah, this is where I changed the volume offset. This is where dying is set to be a 3rd. I think I did that a while ago, though. I could talk about the thing with crafting, but it's just a lot of adding code to, shrink the numbers window so it fits, and create the status window, and reposition windows and stuff. This is just the same status window that I had set up in AC modification, where I had changed the way that it draws information. So there's not a whole lot necessarily to go into there. But that is a huge improvement to that particular interface. So like I said, I've been adding more skills. I've moved a number of skills that were character-specific skills into this area. Consume Conditions is a special Chimera skill that eats conditions and heals HP based on the number of conditions removed. So you really don't want to do that if you can help it. Brilliant Flash got moved here so if I go through my classes, my character classes, some of them are pretty straightforward. Some of them haven't really changed, but the Knight we talked about, skills take into account his HP percentage. The Whammo just uses support skills that are TP based. The Telenergist cares about doing stuff to MP. Some of the stuff has been pretty consistent. The Prismage, max, or MP relative to target. I don't know why it says max. Should say like current MP relative to target. Think Mindburn. Mindburn is a Guild Wars 1 skill that does an effect, and then if you have more energy, which is basically MP equivalent, than the target, it does an additional effect on top of it. It basically doubles the effect on things like that. Sorcerer has additional effects on critical hit, so the spells can crit for additional effects. The War Mage skills have drawbacks, so like cost HP, make you lose auras, buffs potentially, or cause conditions or debuffs. I'm not entirely sure exactly how this is going to all play out, but right now I've given her a skill that makes her lose Flame Swath right here. Makes her lose HP when she hits enemies. Kind of like Recoil from Pokemon. Blizzagus, I still kind of need to figure out what the Blizzagus is about. This one I haven't figured out what his gimmick is. But part of what I want here is I want to make sure each character has a very clear mechanical focus, that I'm not duplicating too much outside of it. Like right now, the Sorcerer has additional effects on critical hits for skills, right? There is a skill that does that right up here, Slicing Winds, doubles damage if you get a critical hit. I might change this one, so that way it's not the same. But that's, a piece of functionality that this has right now. And like I said, I might change that to keep that located just in this class, because I want stuff to be very specific. And like stuff that I drop here from the War Mage, because I'm not going to probably do all of these things. I might do things like debuffs and cost max HP. That's probably the main things I'm going to do with this. So some of these other effects might get thrown into some of that regular stuff. But the Warlock, we already have the dice rolling type thing. So I want to be careful about how I'd handle randomness on other things, again, to keep the niche. I'm changing the Druid to be interacting with TP rather than directly with other things. So TP, kind of like the Telenergist, except for TP instead of MP. I'll have to see how that goes and how that gets balanced over time as well. The Special Forces, I've kind of decided to kind of fudge a little bit, but skills have bonus effects on critical hits, kind of, I don't know, somewhere in that general territory. This one I'm going to need to play around with because I want to make sure it's distinct from Sorcerer, but the fact that this is a magic class and this is a physical class does create a distinction. Ranger focuses on conditions. That's always been true. The Ninja, I just want it to feel like a ninja. And then the Berserker uses the offensive skills, and then the Sage has its gimmick of giving itself stuff. I believe I talked last time that I decided that these should be no specific duration. They basically end when she dies or sleeps at an inn. But they can only be used on her, not on everyone, because I think that made her too strong when they could be used on everyone. And kind of invalidated some of what I was setting up with the skill sets. So if we look at some of the skill changes that I have done in response to this, it's mostly so far been to move stuff out and into those other areas. I think I've gone over most of these. This one does more damage, the lower your HP. This one heals based on HP missing. This applies buffs, increasing amount for HP missing. And then this one is the Resurrect. I think I talked about those. These haven't really changed. I like this spot where these mostly are, except this one I've made all allies. I've added a lot more condition removal. That was one of the things that I ran into as a problem in the game with the original way that I was setting up skills, how skills are handled, is I just didn't have any sort of common skill that was condition removal. So I had to make all of these like special skills that were condition removal. And that's part of why I abandoned the system. That's part of why I added the antidote item, but the antidote item is good to have. But I added, because you now have access to cleanse. So far, like right now, I've added cleanse, which is very simple. Cure an ally if a condition, and if you did, it heals them. Very straightforward skill, a little bit slow, with the idea that you can clean them up after other things have happened for the most part. And then purge conditions goes deep. Right? It literally moves all conditions, but has no healing associated with it. And there's a couple of other things that can heal that are like attached to other things. But I decided that Shake It Off, therefore, it doesn't heal for very much. So to kind of differentiate it from something like Purge Conditions, it costs TP, which is a differentiation in and of itself. But it also goes wide and heals all of your allies of a condition. And that, to me, is a big difference. Get Up, I haven't tested yet, but this is a resurrection skill. Again, that costs TP. Quite a bit of it, too. But that's late enough that hopefully she has enough max TP at that point. Nothing really happening here with the Telenergist. I need to move Resonant Healing out of the Telenergist, though. This is no longer appropriate to this class. Piercing Gleam is I have modified. So this one takes MP into account. I haven't figured out what I want to do with the Searing Flames spot yet. I will likely not keep this skill as is. We'll see. Like, if I want to move it out of here, I mean. I haven't really started setting up a lot of enemies that do self-buffing stuff yet. So that's something I'm going to have to figure out what I want to do for counters for that when I start adding it. And I may want a skill like this, but I don't necessarily want it yet. But Piercing Gleam right now is the skill that the Prismage has, which does a decent amount of damage, and the damage is doubled if you have more MP than that foe currently has MP, which is very useful. And this is quite a useful skill. And then right here for the Sorcerer, Enervating Bolt and Lightning Bolt were always in a kind of a good spot. I like them. Exposing Shock needs to go. Yeah, that's really all I got to say about it. It removes all auras and does damage times wind and fire, so it does damage for each aura removed, and removes all buffs. This is a very powerful spell. I will likely keep it because I think it's a very useful counter to things, but it's not going to be a sorcerer's spell, but I'm leaving it here for now. Burning, and although I should add this needs to get changed to it. You know, let's just go ahead and while we are just on here, move it up here. Exposing Shock. You're out of there. You're going to be changed later. Burning Intensity is a new spell that I added. It does fire damage, and if you get a critical hit on it, then has a pretty good chance of doing, and even better if you're wielding a dagger, which I believe you can do, then you get a buff to your fire. And then you do the damage. So it actually will hit harder if you get that critical hit because of that. But you gain a stage of fire for, 3 turns? So that's how this one works. This one's a neat, slightly different one. Here's Flame Swath. Like I said, you lose a 15th of your maximum HP, and then you do plus 3 times your fire stat. So this actually hits pretty hard, and it also counts as a magical attack. So this is actually quite effective. It can crit. It has a slightly higher crit chance, so that means it can work pretty well with the Scythe, which gives you HP back when you critical hit. Flaming Strike needs to be changed to something. I don't know what that is yet. I don't know what I'm doing yet with any of this stuff because I don't know what the Blizzagus is doing. These haven't changed here. Just Draining Dark, heal for 3d6. All these are kind of the same. I've changed this one. I've not tested it yet, but this makes somebody lose TP and then does damage based on it. It's basically think the MP burn spell that makes them lose some MP and then does damage based on the amount of MP they lost. It does the same sort of thing where it takes the minimum value between their current TP and a third of your wind stat. So basically, whichever one is less. So if you're are out of TP, this basically doesn't do anything. But if you're full TP, it takes up to your wind, a third of your wind. And then they lose that TP and take damage equal to that. What I like about this one is the damage is based on your Earth stat, but the amount of TP loss is based on your Wind stat, which is kind of a cool way of using both stats. I haven't done anything to these yet. I'm going to be figuring those out later. I'm okay with these skills. Prepare for Battle, I've added some TP gain to it. Just feels like it does a bit more if I do that. I have done a number of tweaks to the Ranger. Hunter Strike was originally a skill that I realized I wasn't using. And the reason why is it was basically this functionality where it would take your dexterity and multiply that by the number of conditions the target had, and that's how much bonus damage it would get. But if they didn't already have a condition, it didn't do any bonus damage. So I realized that this is maybe not quite doing the role that I want. So I've set it up to instead be plus damage, and then that plus damage again if the enemy has a condition. So you can see right here, it takes your dexterity and it times it by 2 if they have a condition. That's what's going on here. This line of code that is partially obscured by my face. I need to remember to move this over. It feels really weird to me, but it looks better for you. Apply Poultices, just sitting here. It removes a condition and puts Rejuvenation on them. And if a condition is removed, it heals them for a bit of HP. And then Predator's Flurry is where I took that idea of stats. It's basically a Blitz variant where it attacks all enemies but it does plus damage to enemies based on the number of conditions they have, equal to a third of your dex. So I don't know how this one is yet either, but presumably by this point in the game, you'll actually have some of those things going on. From the Shadows, I think was around last time. These are just here. I don't know. I don't have much to say about them. Yeah, so that's kind of what's been going on in that regard. Here's Enraged Smash. This is 1.5 times your TP for plus damage. And Reap is just automatically crit and attack all enemies, but slow, and is not as likely to inflict conditions. And then we have Fruit Salad, which applies the state using my additional stuff that allows me to add 10 to things because it's not a native functionality for states. I had to graft that on because RPG Maker. And I've been slowly filling these things out and added the adventure kit and all that good stuff. Carrots give you the boost to accuracy. You can see onions give you a boost to critical hit rate. This gives you a reduced chance of being critically hit. I like some of these where the meat gives you plus 10% strength, but eating it raw might poison you. Fish might also poison you. Mushrooms increases your maximum HP. Nuts preserves your TP between battles. I decided that a lot of the fruit should boost affinity for various elements. Bread I added. Some of these I'm still figuring out. Berries gives you some MP regen. Cherries gives you some wind affinity. And bottle of water does some stuff. It's not all the way there, but it's slowly being fleshed out. Another important thing that I did is just kind of a smaller thing. Oh, here's the 3 foods that are here right now. You already saw them in game though. I interrupted myself, but I went into the Adventurers Guild membership card, and I've modified it so that way instead of setting a variable here to the number of points you needed, I just moved the statement inside here. It fixes a bug that would happen, particularly on the overworld, and I think I know why it was happening. But sometimes when you're walking around the overworld, when you're checking your Adventurers Guild card, it'd be like, yeah, it's out of 1. I'm like, what? No, it's not. And it's like, yeah, it's out of 1. It's like, no, it should be out of 10 or out of 50. So this fixes that because it's no longer relying on that variable. The reason why I think it was breaking is if I go back up to the world, and one of the things I want to start doing, by the way, is attaching all of these ports around. Over here is the music control stuff. And this right here stores the player's current area in temp. And it's doing this all the time. And I think what's happening is this is not self-contained per se. When the dialogue comes up, I think that this is setting it like in between calculating out what it should be set to and then displaying the message. And so I think this was setting it, and this is why it's getting 1 all the time because I'm in World Region 1. So that, I think, is what was going on, and why I was getting that weird behavior. So I've fixed that. I feel like there's probably a few things that I'm missing. I've been slowly like peppering in some NPCs here and there, in some places, fleshing out some of the services, adding stuff you can buy or make. The overall goal is that I'm just trying to understand what the shape of the game should look like. I'm really happy to have the goal of get here to get your boats. That way you can sail on over to here. I think I might increase some of the ocean width because it feels a little tight getting along like here. So I think I might make this a little wider. So that way you can come here a little bit more easily. But I'm slowly expanding the world, slowly expanding stuff to do, figuring out my methods of progression. The skill set thing seems to work overall pretty well. I need to, like I said, add more enemies in the early areas because these areas right here, particularly the forest, is just too monotone in terms of enemy groups, and it really needs more variety. It really needs a bit more interest. I want to make some of these new enemies. Particularly, I want to make some slime, some oozes that drop fruit. So that way you can kind of be incentivized to make fruit salad and stuff that way. And I want to begin thinking about some of that as well in terms of the acquisition of food resources outside of just purchasing them in towns. Because I think that'll make cooking more valuable and more interesting as a thing to do if I do that as well. So that's kind of where my brain's at. That's kind of where I'm thinking things through. I'm looking forward to expanding to some of these other areas, expanding sort of the types of enemies I'm making, thinking about also thematically what sort of gear I'm making in each area. Kendra is a bit of a test bed. It's the largest map region, I think, singularly by itself. Yeah. Ron Piety is also pretty big right here. But even that is like maybe 60% of Kendra. Elsana is actually pretty big too. But Kendra is very big and has a lot of stuff going on, and it's just kind of a test bed. There's a couple of useful things about its design. One of the first ones is just like generic. It is super, super thematically generic. It's like, here's a fantasy setting with an adventurers guild that's hunting monsters. That's really, really generic, but that's really useful for me because it means that I can kind of like play around with my very basic effects and kind of get a basic feel. This is like I am making alpha for Magic the Gathering. And then I'm going over here and I'm making, I don't know, Shadowmoor. Shadowmoor feels about right. Or I'm coming down here and I'm making Innistrad. Or I'm coming over here and I'm not quite sure if I was trying to make magic sets what I compare this to. But each area can kind of be more thematically tied to some concept. And that's going to allow me to figure out, okay, how do I diverge stuff from this area from what was happening over here in Kendra? Because again, Kendra sets sort of the baseline. Here's what things kind of look like at their like simplest, most straightforward way, which is how you want things to begin in the beginning anyway. And then as I branch out from there, I get to explore some of that thematic variation a lot more. At least that's the goal that I want to achieve anyway. And I'm looking forward to thinking through that and exploring that and figuring out how all that stuff is going to come together and pulling this whole thing together eventually over long periods of time. It's going to be interesting making here. I'll have to think about how I want to do this because it's very small in terms of area. This is Mishizo's area. I forget, Kushigai, I think. Because it has very little area, it's probably going to have a lot of stuff with some of these knockdown buildings and things. But anyway, that's future CNTR problems, or opportunities. So yeah, just getting the basics figured out with Kendra, the basics of how everything's structured, how progression is structured, and all that sort of stuff. And as we go, I will be able to expand the opportunities for what things will be. I guess you're probably going to want to get a ship down here, right? These are shipwrights. They're very good at their boats. That's probably what I'm going to have to do. Well, that's enough of me kind of thinking through on the future. For right now, my focus is on getting Kendra to good shape, to have it be kind of fun to progress. I have done a few other tweaks too, like I reduced the enemy encounter rate in the starting Forgotten Tomb area, the Ancient Catacombs. Oh, another thing that I should point out is these are now gold chests. I decided when I was going through that I want to keep these to just key items, particularly because this is a safe, for crying out loud, and put skill sets in these. These originally were going to be just offhands, and it's like, I'm not dropping that many offhands anyway. There's no reason not to bundle them in with weapons. So these are now weapons and offhands. These are skill sets, armor and accessories, consumables, crafting materials, key items only, food, and money. So I want to have a very specific language with my chests so you know what to expect when you see them. So yeah, fleshing stuff out. I made too many towns in Kendra. Like if I just go back over here, there's just a lot of towns. A lot of towns I want to put something relevant in, even if it's just like, here's an Adventurers Guild outpost and like a shop to buy something. But I kind of want to make sure there's a little bit of something distinct in each one. The other thing that I'm going to want to figure out is setting up quests and how I'm going to do that, and all that sort of stuff too. Making the residential area over here relevant, and all that good stuff. But I think I've probably tried to end this episode about 4 times now, so I should actually do it for realsies this time. So thank you all for watching, and like I said, I've probably forgotten some small details, but pulling stuff together, stuff is progressing. I feel like the design is kind of firming up. I'm really liking what I'm doing with the skill stuff. The skill sets really helped solve some of the problems that I had with how things were structured by kind of moving common skills conceptually out of being a level up thing and into that area. Allows me to create some individualization to each region and allows the characters to kind of breathe a little bit more and not put so much pressure on which ones you select in order to get very specific common effects, and as well as to allow me to make common effects more common, like the ability to clear off conditions, for example. So farewell, everyone. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.